Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Good morning to you. A good, blessed Sabbath. May it come your way and may it fill you with strength for the new week, for the time to come. We have a blessing today. We are in the 9th Parsha of Torah. Every book of Torah, of the first 5 books of the Bible, every book of the Torah is set up in a diagram, a pattern. And the first 4 chapters of the book of Genesis, for instance, there are 3 subdivisions of every book, and every book of Torah. And we're into the final third section of the Torah's first book, Vayeshev, Genesis. And so what we're going to do is we're going to shift from the first 4 parshas of Genesis were the introduction, Vayeshev, Noach, Lech Lecha, Vayera. That kind of introduced the Holy One to us, introduced who he is and what his plan is, what our problems on earth are, and what his solution for those problems are. That's what the first day of the Torah, particularly of Sefer Vayeshev, the book of Genesis, was all about. And then we went into the second day. We've been in the second day for the last 4 weeks. And those parshas were Chaye Sarah and Toldot and Vayetze and Vayishlach. And in those 4 sections, the second day, we learned how the covenant and the plan begins to work in individual lives, and then begin to set the patterns of what the covenant impact will be, so that we can actually begin to fix the world the way the Creator of the universe designed to happen. So that's the first and the second day. Those are now complete. We're entering the third day. It's a prophetic statement. It's a prophetic declaration. It's a prophetic vision. And the end of times, or the latter days, is always pictured by the third day section of every book of the Torah. I would go so far as to say it also transcends and goes into the prophetic books, into the writings, the books of the writings that have made it into the canon, into the gospel stories, into the book of Acts, and into the letters, and into the Revelation. I believe every part of the Revelation stream is made up, every book of the Revelation stream is made up of these 3 days, of these 3 prophetic segments. But we are at the point now of entering the third day, and everything begins to shift. We see big shifts take place. We've been laying foundations and laying upon the foundations, the seals, and those things have been given to us. Now we're going to actually see some structure begin to come into place, and we're going to see the end game begin to come into view, the Creator's end game. And how we get to the end game will be in play. So we're going to be introduced to new characters, new places. We're going to be introduced to Yosef. And we're really going to be introduced for the first real time to Yehuda. We're going to get to know him. And this interplay between Yosef and Yehuda, King James translators would have called them Joseph and Judah, and you may know them by those names. But it's Yosef, the firstborn son of Rachel, and Yehuda, the 4th son of Leah. 4th son of Leah. And so these are the 2 that are going to be the major interplay in the third day, on the third day. Don't ever consider either one of them acting completely independently of one another. They're always going to be tied together. And this is the way it is. The Yehuda forerunner and the Yosef forerunner are going to be playing together and bringing about the great plan of the Holy One in the latter days, the end of the days of the earth. It's a prophetic vision, the third day. There will be 4 parshas. The first one is this week's parsha, which we've been reading hopefully all week long. That's Vayeshev. And then the next parsha will be Meketz. And then the third of these 4 sections will be my mind is slipping me right now. It will be Vayigash, and the 4th one will be Vayechi, and that will be the conclusion of the book of Genesis. We'll see how this end game begins to flow together and begins to take form and shape. Now, so that all being said, let me introduce you to what we're going to be talking about this week, the 9th episode in our Walking in the Light series. Parsha number 9, Vayeshev, Genesis 37:1 through 40:23. As you know, our theme this year for 5785, our Torah study theme this year is Walking in the Light. discovering the secret wisdom hidden or encoded within Torah's timeless stories. So, we have to ask ourselves, why we study the Torah at all? What is so special about the Torah? Why Torah occupies so much of our time? Other religions don't seem to put that much emphasis, especially on like systematic, direct, sequential study of their holy book. But the Torah is special. The Torah is different. Why do we study the Torah? Because the Torah, you see, is the creator of the universe's playbook. The scroll of the Torah is the script for all human life. It establishes the template for all of human history. It provides us a roadmap for the long odyssey that will lead mankind back to the Garden of Eden, back to continual communion with the creator of the universe, and back to the B'Tselem Elohim, image of God, calling that was placed upon man in the very day of his creation. The Torah is the Creator's playbook, and it is the wellspring of all wisdom and revelation. And any other revelation that we receive must be interpreted in light of the Torah. The Torah is the basic foundation. It is the spring, the wellspring out of which all the rivers of wisdom and revelation ever flow. And it is the instruction manual for mankind. The instruction manual on how to get back to the garden. It's the roadmap. It's the continual communion invitation. It is the B'Tselem Elohim, in the image of God, calling reminder. The instruction manual for fixing the individual soul, for fixing the areas of the geographical world and the physical earth that we live upon. The cities, the towns, the villages, the mountains, the hills. And it's the instruction manual for fixing as well the creation, the cosmos, the overall plan of the creator of the universe, and bringing it back to his original state and its original plan. That's why we study the Torah. And the revelation of Torah is progressive. I've tried to tell you about day 1, day 2, day 3, first day, second day, third day, elements of each book. And that's overall general. We're trying to get you progressively ready, raised higher and higher in different levels at different stages. So each new story of the Torah, and the great storyteller is weaving these stories together. But each new story he tells us, and he's going to be telling us some fantastic new stories in the Parsha of Vayeshev, and then on continuing through Miketz and Vayegash and Vayeki until the end of the book. And then we're going to start a whole new realm of stories about level 2, the great nation as opposed to the patriarchs. So each new story of Torah builds upon the foundations that were laid in the previous ones. Remember this. Don't try to consider these stories independent of one another. Remember how they sequentially are laid together. So that does not mean, however, as some believe, it does not mean that the revelation quality of the early stories is inferior to that of the later stories. Not at all. Nor are they in any way flawed or defective, or will they ever be obsolete. The stories that begin the whole episodes are the foundation of everything. And one needs to understand and be able to apply, as we do with math or arithmetic. One needs to be able to apply basic arithmetic before he or she can do any algebra or geometry or trigonometry or calculus or any kind of architecture or engineering or construction or higher level problem solving or repair that depends upon any basic arithmetic function. We understand that the critical factor of what the numbers are and how they relate together and how addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division and factoring takes place is critical, will always remain critical. It will never be superseded by calculus or engineering studies. We have to know basic arithmetic. So it is with the stories of Torah. We must be very familiar with the basic stories of Torah, starting with the patriarchs. That's book 1. So we're in week 9, and weeks 9 through 12 of our quest to find the meaning of life in Torah will find us in the latter days of the season of the Avot, of the patriarchs. The patriarchal narratives, the family stories of our history, are given to us to shape our God consciousness, our worldview. They are to remind us of our mission, our calling. They are to help us frame our own self-image, our own identity feelings and sensations. And they are given to us to help us define the quality of the impact and the specifics of the kind of impact we're supposed to have in our interactions with the Creator's ecosystem and the rest of humanity. The stories of the patriarchs, our family stories, also lay out the sociological blueprint for the specific devarim and mitzvot and mishpatim and hukot, the words of instruction, the mitzvot, the commands, the mishpatim, the judgments or ordinances, and the hukot, the directives that we are going to receive as a nation in Egypt in the days of the Exodus, then at Marah, then at Mount Sinai primarily, and then following that also in the course of our latter wilderness journey of return as a nation. So we need to understand this principle as we get into these third day stories of the book of Genesis. Here's the Hebrew way of phrasing it. Ma'aseh avot siman labanim. I'll repeat it for you. Let the Hebrew just talk to your spirit, your neshama. Ma'aseh avot siman labanim. And it means something like this in English. The life experiences of the patriarchs were just signposts, directional, locational indicators for all their descendants in all our generations. That's why intimate familiarity with Torah's stories, particularly about our patriarchs, provides us critical insight into the nature and motivations of our Creator and also of fallen man, and our own nature, and our own motivations, and our own challenges. The life experiences of the patriarchs and the stories about them give us an important advantage over our enemies and adversaries and our nemesis characters, our antithesis, those that are personal and those that are cultural, those that come from within our community and those that come from without, those that are internal to us and those that are external to us. An important advantage over our enemies. These stories, the way the Holy One has crafted these stories and designed these stories and sequenced these stories, help us to understand and transcend the major problems we have to deal with on our return to Eden. What are those? We have our own Yetzer Hara, our own inclination toward the darkness. We have covenant envy of other people. We have climatological cataclysms. We have everything from thorns and thistles that we have to navigate and make the earth produce with, to famines and pestilences and plagues and wars and earthquakes and tsunamis and all the things that we have to deal with. And so the life experiences of the patriarchs introduce these things to us. And they also help us introduce us to dispersion, diaspora, being spread throughout the earth, and with that loneliness factor that comes in, and that sense of being a minority, a persecuted minority, it feels like, because we're being sown like seed. And then above that, we learn from these stories how to deal with exile, how to cast off exile slime, how to deal also with captivity, and that's what the next season will be all about. The prophetic third day is all about captivity and eventual return. Captivity and eventual return, laying the foundation for return. And then the trials of return. That's the story. And so the pages of the blueprint bundle that we get with Torah are, first of all, the calling of the Creator. From Lech Lecha and Shema, Shemar, Asa, listen carefully to the verse and follow into the Messiah's, follow me, come follow me. This calling of the Creator is the first page of the blueprint bundle. It's connection, it's connectivity. It's not about belief, it's about a connectivity and about a relationship, a communion with the Creator, calling of the Creator, Lech Lecha, Shema, come follow me. And the next thing is the covenant, the next page of the blueprint bundle, when you unfold the first after the encounter that you have and the calling of the Creator. Then you come into the covenant, the definition of what the relationship between man and God is supposed to be, the elements of it, the protocols of it, of kingdom courtiership, how to learn how to behave in communion, in fellowship, in interactions with the Creator. And then the third page of the blueprint bundle is the distraction, seduction, falling away page, where we learn what our nemesis are, what our weaknesses are, what our susceptibilities are, what the world's going to throw at us. And the distraction, seduction, falling away page is there. And the fourth page, though, is the return and recenter impetus page. And that tells us what is going to cause us to come back after we've been distracted. come home after we've been seduced away, and return to the Creator of the universe and His covenant and His calling whenever we've fallen away. What is that? We've talked about climatological, environmental challenges, thorn thistles and famines and pestilences and wars and cataclysms. We've talked about personal nemesis and antitheses with their flashpoints of dominion when they intervene, interject themselves upon us, and we're tempted to just bow down and do what they do. These are the second form of a return and recenter impetuses. The Holy One lets us encounter these, so we will want to run back to Him, run back to His arms. The third of these return recenter impetuses is exile, the culture-wide covenant envy or anti-Semitism with its pogroms, with its Holocaust. And the whole idea of these is to drive us back, to make us have a reason to go back home. And then there's the captivity, and that's what we'll talk about, Shibut, from Shavah, which means be taken as a prisoner of war. This is the highest, worst level of our distraction, seduction, and falling away, when we're actually taken captive, taken as a prisoner of war, as it were, by the forces of the hostility. That's not the end of the story, though. The pages of the blueprint bundle continue with the deliverance page. Yeshuat Adonai, the Yeshua, the salvation, the redemption of Adonai. And the following lessons. He doesn't just redeem us, He calls us to follow Him, and He gives us disciplines to follow Him. And then there's the nation forging and foreigner engrafting and synergizing page, when we actually begin to relate to one another and people from different cultures and nations, all moving in the same direction, following the Mashiach, following the Yeshua Adonai. And then we have the challenges and the disciplines of our return. This is the pages of the blueprint bundle. Finally, the administration of the kingdom of heaven upon the earth. The messianic kingdom, the 1,000-year reign. These are the pictures that are drawn in every book of the Torah, the pages of the blueprint bundle of the Torah's vision. So, welcome to Parsha number 9, Vayeshev. Into dispersion and diaspora, and into captivity we shall go, just as was prophesied. If you remember in Genesis 15, the vision of the passing between the parts, the torch passing between the parts. For 400 years we would be servants of another kingdom, captives in their land. So into captivity we will go. And if you thought that climate cataclysm slime and personal nemesis slime and culture-wide covenant envy slime, anti-Semitism slime, and exile slime were hard to wipe off and get off of your skin and off of your heart and off of your soul, well, captivity presents a whole nother challenge. But take note, captivity is coming because it's part of the grand plan. Those who would not come back to the Holy One and His ways and His calling and His covenant through the impetus of the exile or the diaspora will have to come back through the captivity. So take note, a person may not like the Holy One's plan. You may not like what the Holy One has planned. A person may not willingly embrace the role in that plan for which he or she, or as the case may be, and their family have been cast. We may want to take a ship to Tarshish as opposed to going to Nineveh. But whether we like the plan of the Holy One or not, whether we want to embrace the role that He has cast for us in that plan or not, the show, the plan, the drama must go on. The drama must unfold exactly as it is written. It is the plan of the Creator of the universe. So, as we get ready to start today in this third day vision of the first book of the Bible, gird up your loins, take a deep breath. Let's lift up our voices and sing the Baruch blessing together. Then recite Psalm 119, 18 through 19 aloud, as is our custom, and plunge right in. The call to worship is the Baruch, the blessing before reading from the Torah. Join me if you know it in Hebrew. Otherwise, just listen. Take a moment. Take a breath. Refresh your heart. Baku et Adonai Hamvorak. Baruch Adonai Hamvorak Leolam Vayed. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amin V'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Ata Adonai Noten HaTorah. Amen. And now open our eyes, O Holy One, that we may see wondrous things in your Torah, for we are just strangers in this earth. So do not hide your instructions from us. And now gather round, children of the Most High, because it's story time again. The opening lines of our Parsha. Vayeshev Yaakov, and Yaakov settled and sat and sprawled. Be'eretz megurei aviv, in the land or country where his fathers had sojourned. Be'eretz Canaan, in the land or country of Canaan. Ele toldot Yaakov, and these are the prophetic narratives, the cross-generational impact stories of Yaakov. One word, one name, one person. Yosef, Joseph. So from the opening lines of the Parsha, the ninth Parsha of Torah, Parsha Vayeshev, we are given to understand that in the third day of the prophetic era, the third epoch, the end game, end times picture of the book of Genesis, in this season, the next generation of the covenant, the third day era of covenantal impact, it is going to be led, we are going to be led by Rachel's firstborn son, Yosef. Yosef is going to be Yaakov, Israel's successor in the covenant. He is to be the next level secret asset of the Holy One. We're going to close out with Yosef and Yehuda on the backside, closing out and completing the cycle of the patriarchal era. We will next enter, beginning a few weeks away, we will enter the great nation building era of the book of Exodus. But right now, they're still in the very end of the patriarchal era, the third day. This first epoch of covenantal script writing is drawing to a close. For this last day's era or epoch, the great storyteller of Torah is bringing a fascinating new character into the spotlight. His name, as we've said, is Joseph. And over the course of Parshot Vayeshev, Miketz, Vayegash, and Vayeki, the last four parshas in the book of Genesis, Joseph's storyline will set the template for another end times character that will appear in times to come. That will be Mashiach. You want to know and understand Mashiach, Messiah. If you want to know and understand Messiah, it is not hard. It's not difficult. The Holy One has a plan to help you to do that. Just study and meditate on the Yosef story. The personalities and patterns of Yosef and Mashiach are one and the same. This is the hidden wisdom, the encoded wisdom of the Torah about the last four parshas of Genesis. So as the storyteller continues this great story we've been reading, keep this truth ever in mind. Yaakov and his house, the second day version of the covenant representation on the earth, represents the root structure of the great nation that the Holy One intends to use to counterbalance and ultimately overcome humanity and creation's problem with Ra, evil, Shekat, corruption, Hamas, violence, cruelty, oppression, Ivelet, folly, Hevel, vanity, Chol, that which is profane and common, Tuma, that which is unclean and scattering, fragmenting of the soul, and Avon. These are the problems that mankind has, and the Holy One is using the great nation to counterbalance and ultimately overcome those and bring Tikkun Olam. But the root structure is found in the second day portion of Genesis, the stories of Yaakov, Jacob, and his house. But that's going to lead us to now the Yosef and his house stories. The stories of Yosef and his house represent the full-grown tree of life that will sprout from the root structure of the second day of Yaakov and his house. Yosef's house will spring out of Yaakov's house. The tree of life that will sprout out from that root structure will provide sustenance and shade and true abundant life on earth as is in heaven to the world. Oh yes, get to know the Yosef stories very well. Understand the relationship to Mashiach. So, how do we get to know Yosef? How do we get to know this guy, this character that's being introduced to us? The circumstances surrounding his birth, that was our first introduction, was Genesis chapter 30, 22 through 24. After Leah had had 6 sons and Dinah, a daughter, we are told that God remembered Rachel, which is her sister. And God shemad her, listened to her prayers, and opened her womb. And Rachel conceived and bore a son. This was her firstborn, and said, when he was born, God has taken away my reproach, and he will add, gather, increase, Yasaf, again, another. So she called his name Yosef, and she said, the Holy One will add, expand to me another son. Okay, so that's the way we got introduced to him. He is going to be the prototypical secret agent, special forces asset of the kingdom for the next 4 parshas. And actually, with his prototype being of Mashiach forever, for all generations. Yosef's mission, though, is so secret that even he can't know what it is. Even his father, even his brothers cannot understand what it was. They can't be told. There's no briefing to tell them what he is going to do, what his role is going to be, because it must be a secret. The timing of his arrival in Egypt and the manner of his arrival in Egypt, and then his length and the season that he spends in the house of Potiphar and in the presence of Potiphar's wife, his detention in prison for high-ranking enemies of the state, they're all elements of the divine strategery. They must happen just as they are written, even if we would look at it and say, don't make that happen to Yosef. He doesn't deserve that. As the Holy One's point man of redemption, Yosef absolutely has to be dragged to Egypt in chains as the prototypical captive, as all captives will follow his example, because he has to be on call at a moment's notice when he's there. He must be there to interpret a dream the Holy One intends for Pharaoh to have at a given moment. He must be in that prison. He must be under sentence. He must be there to serve the other inmates, the baker and the cupbearer of the Pharaoh. He must be there at that time. And prototypically, he must be then to save the world, to have a pattern of saving the world. He must not be allowed to leave once he gets to Egypt, so he must be a slave. He must be a slave to a high-ranking man close to Pharaoh, in Pharaoh's employ. He must be falsely accused of this heinous crime by Mrs. Potiphar and thrown into the prison, which will be the source of his deliverance and mankind's deliverance. That's where he's destined to meet Pharaoh's cupbearer, the man who will bring him to the position he will one day introduce himself to in Joseph's court. Now let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the other important character of these stories, these last 4 parshas. Along with Yosef, we have Judah. Yehuda is Joseph's chief antithesis among the brethren. He's his competitor. Yehuda is bright and smart. Yehuda is wily and he's strong among his brethren. He's listened to. And he's going to have an odyssey of his own, an exile, a captivity of his own go on at the same time, simultaneously with Joseph's odyssey of captivity. Both serve an important part, play an important role in the grand scheme, the grand plan of ultimate redemption. So understand Yehuda, understand Joseph. Yehuda's adventures on the dark side of humanity, which is where he's going to be spending his time, he's going to we'll have him caving into flesh-driven appetites and to mind, will, and emotion-driven attitudes, offenses, and fortune lust. He's going to be fascinated by material things and money and what's in it for me. Ma Betza will be his famous line. What's in it for me? What's the profit? These things will start with him embracing the priorities and wind up with him assimilating into the culture of the Eastern Access pagan world. The Kanani in this case, the house of Hiram. But it's going to correspond to the Neshama Num Hellenists of the days of Antiochus Epiphanes and the Maccabees that had them assimilate and accept and embrace the prototypical abomination that causes desolation, picturing the end of days, picturing the things that Yeshua talked about when you see the abomination of desolation. No, the time of your redemption is near. So let's go back to Joseph now. We understand there's two things going on. There's the Joseph stories that are going to unfold and the Yehuda stories that are going to unfold. They're going to be very, very different, but they're going to end at the same place. And they're going to wind up coordinating and collaborating together. So what makes Joseph tick? We kind of got a picture of what made Yehuda tick. He was caught up in assimilation. He was caught up in these different ways of the nations. He was caught up in Eastern mindsets and Eastern culture. He was caught up in materialism and that. Now, but what's Joseph? What makes Joseph tick? First of all, you see it's the reverence and fear of the Creator of the universe. The fear of the Lord, as it's called, the beginning of wisdom. It's God consciousness, an understanding of covenant calling and responsibility, awareness of that fact. He had that. Yehuda at the beginning did not. And Genesis 39:9 tells us, he said whenever Mrs. Potiphar sought him to commit adultery with her, he said, how then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? Yehuda never said such a thing whenever he was going through his odyssey of darkness. He did not even think about how this was going to affect the Holy One, only about himself. So the first element of what makes Joseph tick is his reverence and fear of the Creator of the universe and his sense of understanding of who the Holy One is, who he is in relation to him, and what the covenant calls him to be and have responsibility for. Do you have that? Are you more like Joseph right now, or are you more like Yehuda? Are you just wanting to play the field? Are you just wanting to get stuff from the world, connect with and be fit in with the world, or are you understanding this great calling upon your life? The second thing that makes Joseph tick, and we'll see this developing over the next 4 years, is that he has a witness factor. The fact that witness, being the Holy One, is with him. It's going to say it multiple times. Genesis 39:2-3, Genesis 39:21-23. This witness factor. Joseph obviously has the Holy One with him. Yehuda, not so much. You can't tell the Holy One's with Yehuda. He is with Yehuda, but there's no external manifestation of it. There's no visibility of that. What is Joseph, though? You could tell. How could you tell? He stayed calm. He stayed patient. He persevered. He withstood all sorts of trials. He never complained. He was patiently trusting the Holy One to do something. He was excellent. He committed to excellence in everything he did. He served humbly, not demanding things, not wanting things for his own flesh, as Yehuda is going to be shown to do. He didn't have a what's in it for me approach. He said, how can I serve? How can I be the representative of the Creator of the universe? So he was task-oriented as opposed to feeling, or as opposed to his will, getting his will done oriented. He was task-oriented for the kingdom. He had a vision for excellence, and he desired to pursue that vision for excellence in everything he did. And he had a favor-based ecosystem factor. Wherever he went, the ecosystem, the world around him, the people around him were blessed as well. It wasn't just a blessing upon him. It was a blessing upon everyone who associated with him and accepted what he did for their life, like Potiphar, like the people in the prison, like the leader of the prison, like the cupbearer, and even to some degree the baker. That's what makes him tick. But let's continue the story. Yosef ben Shva Ezre Shana. Yosef was 17 years old. He wasn't an old guy. He wasn't a baby. Haya ro'eh et achav betzon v'hu na'ar. And as a lad, he would go and tend the sheep with his brothers. Et b'nei Bilha ve'et b'nei Zilpa neshe aviv, the sons of Bilha and Zilpa, his father's wives, the least favored of the various different sons. He would go out and tend the sheep with them because they were the sons of the concubine. So as the story begins, this great last third day vision of the book of Genesis, the in-game pictures that were going to be drawn, Joseph is a 17-year-old shepherd in training. He is the favored son of his father. And that's going to make him persona non grata in the eyes of all of his elder brothers, including, maybe especially, his nemesis, his counterpart, Judah. See, as regard to Joseph and his brothers, his mother was not their mother. That's just the surface stuff, though. His worldview was also not their worldview. His work ethic was not their work ethic. His commitments were not their commitments, and his priorities about life were not their priorities. And this is going to lead to a clash. This is going to result in a clash that is all part of the plan that's going to get Joseph deported, carried off in chains, put in captivity, and taken away to the western side of the one world order world, Egypt. And after all this takes place, we understand that Joseph is going to be at enmity with his brothers. Let's continue the story. How does this enmity work itself? V'yaveh Yosef et debartem ra'ah al avihem. V'yaveh Yosef et debartem ra'ah el avihim. And Yosef brought to his father a bad report about them, particularly in this case, the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah. A report that was true, probably, but that was provocative or incendiary. Now, he only reported probably what he saw. And he only reported it because he was asked to report it. But nevertheless, what he reported was, they don't have the same priorities I have. They don't have the same work ethic. And they are not doing things according to the excellent standard and the overwatch provision of the Holy One as I am doing. So there was enmity was created. That was level one. Oh, but let's go further. It says then that Israel loved Joseph more than all of his sons because he was the son of his old age. And he made for Joseph a tunic, ketonet pasim, a long flowing garment. King James Version loved to call it a coat of many colors. It's a beautiful way of saying it, but it is a garment of a specific authority, saying, this is my beloved son in whom I'm well pleased. This coat of many colors, as it were, we're just a ketonet pasim, a long sleeve coat showing the authority of the father upon his life. So Israel loved Joseph more. He gave him the coat of many colors, and now the enmity grows. The division grows, and it has to grow before they can get him off, carried away in bondage to Egypt. And then the hatred of Joseph's brothers begins to grow in chapter 37, verse 4. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all of the brothers, they hated him. And it says they could not speak peaceably, a shalom word to him. They could not speak without enmity. They could not speak without getting angry. They could not talk to him without getting tense and having anxiety in their voice and in their communications. Have you ever been around people like that? They can't seem to have a calm conversation. They can't speak shalom to him. Oh, I hope we don't have that. But then we get gasoline on the fire. Israel ahav et Yosef mikol banav, and not Israel loved Yosef more than all of his children. Ze ben zachunim hulu lo, because he was the son of his grayness, his elder status. Ve'aseh lo ketonet pasim, and he made him this long-sleeved coat of authority. Now, this was an elaborate chieftain's robe. The gift of this garment sent a message to anyone who saw it about Joseph's high status and authority and his being the one in charge. So that led to some silent treatment from the brothers, social isolation of Joseph. V'yara'u Echav, and when his brothers saw kit oto ava avikim mikol Achav, that their father loved him more, v'yisneu oto, they hated him, v'lo yachlu dabru l'shalom, and they could not bring themselves to speak shalom to him. And then the next level of the division begins to break forth. These stories within the stories. The next story of how Joseph came to be hated by his brothers and how he got put in this situation where he would wind up going to Egypt to be this vessel of deliverance is the two prophetic dreams he told. The Lord of the harvest vision, where he saw all the sheaves in the field over at a harvest time. And all the sheaves of the field. There's one sheaf for each of the brothers. And all the brothers' sheaves bowed down to Joseph's sheaf. He became the Lord of the harvest. Oh, this is such a prophetic word. But it was interpreted as a personal affront to the brothers. And then the next dream that he had was the light of the world, ultimate reunifications of the heavens and the earth vision. This is a big, ultimate cosmic vision of Tikkun Olam. And in the dream, the brothers interpreted, and even the father interpreted, saying, no, this is about personal interaction between you and us. No, it was a big vision about the grand plan of the creator of the universe. Well, sometimes our dreams, the dreams we have, the vision we have about how what the Holy One's doing and how he wants to accomplish it, sometimes our dreams become someone else's nightmare. They are like the brothers. They can't speak a peaceable word to us. They can't talk about it or hear us talking about it without getting anxious, upset, angry, outraged. You've been around it. You've been around it, you've heard it, and maybe you participated in it. But let's go further. And there we were, Joseph said, binding sheaves, alumim, the allotted portions of a crop tied together at harvest. Then we were binding these sheaves in the middle of the field. And behold, my sheaf arose and also stood upright, and your sheaves circled around, and they bowed down to my sheaf. Oh, then the second vision was the sun, the moon, and the 11 stars. They all bowed down to Joseph. And so we see there all the heavens and the earth combined in one place under the authority of Joseph. What a Messiah figure. Oh, what a beautiful picture. Well, we are in the season of hiding of the face whenever trauma begins to enter our world and captivity will come about. So we know the rest of the story, right? After the dreams, the brothers are sent out. They go out to tend the flock of the family at Shechem. That's quite a ways from Hebron or Beersheba. So they go out there, and finally Yaakov calls Joseph to him and says, son, I want you to go check on your brothers. I believe they're out at Shechem. And so Joseph goes. He says, Hanani, behold me, I'm at your service. He goes out. He tries to find them. He goes first to Shechem, and they're not there. They've moved on. Someone finds him in the field wandering around lost and says, what do you want? He guides him to the brothers who are now at Dotan. He comes to Dotan, and when he gets there, they see him coming. And when they see him coming, of course, what happens is they say, here comes that dreamer. They give him a label, a negative label. And boy, this is one of the things that you ought to watch out for. As people of the Holy One, we are not to be those who label people destructively. We are not to dehumanize. We are not to demonize. We are not to in any way reduce the value of another human being by calling them by a label of any variety. So that's what happens. They do, and they say, let's kill him. Let's find him. So they grab him, they beat him, they strip him of this beautiful garment that he was wearing that represented his authority. They kicked him, they stomped him, they threw him in a pit that was probably filled with vipers and serpents and scorpions, at least darkness and moisture and damp. And he cried and he screamed and sought someone to help him, and no one would help him. And they said they laughed at him, they mocked him, and they ate their meal around him and probably threw their crumbs down into the pit at him. And then they decided, let's kill him. And Yehuda says, but what's in this for us? What's in this for us? This is where we begin to see the Yehuda story corrupting with the Joseph story. And you said, my Betsa, what's the profit of killing him? Let's sell him. And then he comes up with the idea of selling him. And we don't know, but Yehuda was doing exactly what the script called for. Unbeknownst, unwillingly, he was participating in this plan to get Joseph down to Egypt, to set up the program, to set up the plan of grand redemption in the latter days, the picture of Mashiach arising and bringing about deliverance, bringing about an opportunity for return. Well, beloved, that's all the time I have with you today. I hope you've enjoyed our little season. Hope you've been awed and inspired by what the Holy One is about to do. Not only in the written script that we're reading from the Torah, but also in our world today. It's not through. It's not going to end the way the world thinks it's going to end. The end game is laid out in the book, in the scroll, in these last 4 parshas of the book of Genesis. I'll see you next week. Shabbat Shalom.